Okay, so I'm just gonna slowly move through. What we're trying to do today is, during our time together, we're going to talk about the why behind the renewal process. Why are we doing this now? What are we trying to gain from the renewal process? How are we going to implement this renewal? And what will you need to do? And then we're going to do some time for question and answer. And we've received some questions about this already. We've previewed the renewal process with some of our professional development partners with DCYF. And so I have some questions that I can answer that I have already received. And I'm also going to have an opportunity to take your questions today, and hopefully they'll help me think a little bit more deeply and in a more nuanced way about what we're trying to do so that the implementation goes a little bit smoother. It's likely that you might ask me questions that I can't answer, and that's okay too. I appreciate those questions, and those are the kind of questions that I will get back to in follow-up activities. So why are we changing? Oh, I've lost my mouse. But why are we changing? Why are we changing, and why are we implementing a trainer approval process now? And the reason is that right now we have about 1,400 state-approved trainers in our system. We know not everybody in that, not everybody from that number is an active trainer in our system. And for us, it's really important to have accurate data on the workforce. And so what we're trying to do is, by having a trainer renewal process, is to understand how many of you all, how many state-approved trainers out there are actively delivering training in our system. And so this renewal will ask everybody to submit an application that will show us everybody who is still actively delivering training in our state. We need that data for just informative purposes. It'll help us inform policy. It'll help us inform the kind of professional development supports that we create for all of you. And then we're also trying to make sure that we have a document called the Standards of Practice and Professionalism for State-Approved Training. And that document outlines the expectations and the guidelines that we have for professionals who are interested in becoming state-approved trainers, who have become state-approved trainers. It shows what knowledge and skills we think are necessary for our state-approved trainers to have, and talks about some of the expectations we have for them as they maintain their status and deliver trainings to the public. So this trainer renewal will give people access, trainers access to the newest standards of practice and professionalism, which is being revised now. And those individuals will have an opportunity to look at it and e-sign saying that they have reviewed and understand the policies that we're presenting to them. And it'll give us an opportunity to basically make sure that everybody understands the expectations and the guidelines that we have put out in place for them. We're also looking for a way to make sure that all of you, all of the state-approved trainers who are out there, have an opportunity and a really direct vehicle to our professional development team at DCYF to inform us and help us make decisions about the professional development system and the state-approved trainer system. And we are going to incorporate a survey that all state-approved trainers must complete that tells us what's going well for them as a trainer, what's going okay, what might need to be improved. And we'll use that information to help us make decisions about how we want to, what our system might look like, what supports we might offer in the future. So the whole purpose of our trainer renewal is really to make sure that we have an informed system. We want to have good data. We want to have an opportunity to get trainer input on the system that we create. We want to make sure that trainers are understanding our standards of practice and our expectations. And we want to have a really clear channel of communicating with our trainers. So that's really the big overarching purpose of our why, of why we're implementing trainer renewal now, of why we're really thinking deliberately about what it's going to look like.
Vasilia?
Yes.
So really quickly, there's a question and a comment. It looks like you might be speaking just a little bit too fast. If you could slow it down a little bit, that would be great. And
yeah, I would love to.
The question is, do all trainers, regardless of how recently being approved, will they need to do this by the 31st of December?
Yes, every single trainer in our system will have to go through approval by the end of this year. So for some folks who are new and who are going through the state approved trainer applications now, they could stand to benefit to wait until this renewal happens. But regardless, they're going to be held to the expectations that we are going to phase in incrementally over the next couple of years. So they're always going to have to go through renewal regardless after if they enter now or if they enter after December 31st. It's going to happen. It's an expectation that's going to be required of everybody. Any other questions, Marlene? I can't seem to see the dashboard for whatever reason.
No questions, and I am monitoring it, so I will interrupt you.
Great, and thank you for asking me to slow down the pace. I sometimes get really excited, and this is stuff I've talked about several times today. So I'm also on a little bit of a roll. So thank you for that comment and reminder. So really, our goal is to have a good understanding of who we have in our system and who is doing the work of actively training. And we know that there's different types of trainers in our system. We have higher education trainers. We have specialist trainers who deliver community-based training. We have high school instructors who are also out there who deliver childcare basics in a very different high school setting, very different from some of the other types of settings that people think of when they think about state-approved trainers. And so all the folks who are doing this, who are doing state-approved training, who are entering rosters in merit, will have to go through renewal. And I see that there's a question now. I figured out how to use the chat. Will the application be mailed to us or be on the merit site? Great question, and we're going to get to that in a few minutes. But the application will be on the merit site. So we have spent a little bit of time thinking about what does it mean to be an active trainer, and really that has to do with a couple of factors. We have been thinking about, since we have 1,400 trainers in our system, who we know most of them are not delivering training, at least 50% of them are not. We want to make sure these folks who become state approved are keeping up their craft. We want to make sure that they're getting opportunities to practice, that they're building their expertise, that they're using the credential and the approval that we gave them. So someone who becomes state approved and trains once or twice and doesn't train for 4 years is not necessarily the same kind of trainer that they were when they first applied. So it's what we're defining and what we're using right now as a definition is that active trainers have facilitated training in the last 12 months. That is a caveat. Trainers who are delivering childcare basics in a high school setting might not be required to have delivered in the last 12 months because some high school instructors don't deliver childcare basics every single school year. Some of them take a year off from it and then come back every other year. So that's not necessarily a requirement for high school instructors, but it is the requirement that we are considering right now for state-approved trainers, higher ed trainers, specialist trainers who do community-based training. And we have had, in the course of state approval for trainers, this requirement that trainers complete 15 in-service hours annually. And that requirement has in the past been to ensure that trainers are building their skills as professional development facilitators, that they understand adult learning, that they understand how to facilitate conversations, that they know how to design a training. So we had this requirement loosely in place as a guideline. We were not enforcing it as a way to encourage people to continue their professional development around this topic area that's relevant for their state-approved trainer role. Now, we are going to start we're going to start documenting those in-service hours. And those in-service hours will be connected to that individual's merit account. Right now, we don't have, and the way that we're thinking about it right now, we don't have a way of saying it has to be an adult learning, because a lot of the barriers that we've encountered over the last couple of years have been that there's not a lot of adult learning specific, instructional design specific content out there. But we want to make sure people are still actively engaged and building their understanding of child development, of pedagogy, of instructional leadership, of business management for childcare programs. We want to make sure people are still learning. So what we're going to do over the next couple of years is incrementally incorporate this requirement of 15 in-service hours annually, and we'll have more specifications about which content areas that's going to be in. Not clearly defined yet. It's one of those things that's still in process, and I'm not sure what is good for this round of renewal in December. That's not one of those requirements that's going to be put in place. And I just want to also mention that neither is the first bullet, which is facilitated training in the last 12 months. So moving forward, all of these are going to be requirements, but not everything is going to be implemented at the same time. We also have a requirement that all active trainers are those trainers who have resolved any complaints against them as a trainer and against some of the training content that they deliver. Everybody sometimes has a complaint put in, maybe not everybody, but we occasionally do have complaints that are put about a training content topic or potentially a trainer's delivery and facilitation. And we want to make sure that that trainer addresses those issues and those don't remain unresolved on their account. And there's also training policies in place for data entry. And some of those things might be that rosters are entered within a certain time period, that trainings are entered into merit a certain time period prior to the training event. So those things are also going to be put in place eventually. I'm going to look at the chat box real quick because I see there's been a lot of questions. And so you're going to hear me pause for a second as I do some scrolling.
Vasilia, if you want, I can jot all of these down and we could follow up with like an FAQs or something where we can answer all of them. That way we're not, you know, if you have these in the slides later on, you know, you're not having to just stop and then.
I think that's a great idea, and I also want to answer some of these in person because the folks have made the time to be here, and I am right here. So if I have ready answers, I think I can provide them. Lita does say, does college credit count for in-service? And that's a really great question, and one of those things that I have not encountered yet. So I don't have a ready answer for it, but I definitely think that's interesting, and we do count college credit towards in-service hours and towards the annual continuing education hours in merit. So that's something I will definitely consider and incorporate into our policy. Peggy King says specialist trainers were excused from merit online in-service in lieu of continuing education for their licensure. Will that continue? Well, right now, Peggy, the way that this is being inputted into merit and how we're thinking about this renewal application in merit is that the merit application will auto-populate the annual continuing education that you're doing if you're a licensed provider. So there will be some overlap there. Eventually, we're going to move to a system where we do have much more role-specific requirements being put in place for state-approved trainers. And I'm not sure that all 15 hours will be for adult learning or instructional design or a certain percentage of them. But right now, there's that overlap. The in-service hours for your provider role, if you are a provider, is going to match that in-service requirement that you have for trainers. Yeah, Shannon asked me if if annually is defined as 12 months from the renewal or the calendar year or the fiscal year. That's a great question. And there's been a couple of changes in our system lately, right? Our new WAC has in-service shifting from a calendar year to a fiscal year calendar. This renewal deadline was put in place when we were still on a calendar year for in-service hours for providers. So it is part of our plan to transition our renewal calendar to the fiscal year after this renewal happens. So there's going to be a transition period where we do move to that fiscal year schedule. So it will happen. It's one of those questions we've encountered before, but it won't happen right now. And yes, if there are any trainer complaints, in the person's account, that person will be notified of unresolved accounts, and then they'll work with DCYF to move forward. I'm going to move forward now. There's a lot of comments. You guys are super active, and I appreciate it. And that means that this is it's a very important topic for everybody. So I'm going to move forward because I think some of these questions will get answered as I move forward. I want to make sure we get through this by 7, so I don't keep any of you longer than I need to, even though I'm sure you're excited to be here. So the renewal process is going to be a 3-year period. So come this January 1, everybody who submits an application, right, and Merit who completes that application will be reset for 3 years. We're in the process of working with our IT team to create that application, the renewal application in Merit. And you all will receive a notification when those things are live in your accounts. We'll use our professional development newsletter, the Growing the Workforce newsletter, which is specific for trainers and relationship-based professionals. We'll use a host of different methods to get outreach to you, including your emails, which we have on file. So we'll do our best to reach you, and you'll receive notice, and you'll have a specific time to respond. For folks who don't respond, we'll do we'll do several different ways of outreach to make sure that people are all getting messages. And then the renewal application in Merit will be very simple at this time. This round for us is really to make sure that we have some clean data. So if you are still interested in maintaining your status, you're going to go in and you're going to update your information. So that's really important to us, because when I was looking at the latest data sheet of trainers, and there's so many of them, I noticed that there are folks who have transitioned from one training organization to another who hadn't updated their information, so I couldn't tell who they were affiliated with anymore. I noticed that there were folks who trained for, let's say, a child care aware regional office who hadn't mentioned that they were affiliated with that organization in their account. And it's really important for us to be able to draw down clean data and have accurate data about which trainers are associated with which organizations, and if they're an independent trainer, or if they're associated with an educational school district, an ESD, if they're a high school instructor. And so we're going to ask everybody to update their names, update their emails, their addresses, their phone numbers, and their affiliated trainer organization if they have one. We're going to be asked to review the revised standards of practice and professionalism and e-sign saying they've read and understood, and they're going to complete a short survey for us that gives us a little bit of feedback on how we're doing to support the state-approved trainers in our system. And so folks who don't respond in the appropriate amount of time will be able to reinstate their status. The process for that is not entirely defined at the moment. I'm still working on it. And there will be something in place. It's just that I haven't gotten there yet, just full disclosure, but there will be something. At the moment, we are really focusing on trying to figure out how we're going to phase in all of these requirements for active trainers. So I've talked about this renewal cycle is very much update your info, make sure you're understanding the standards of practice and professionalism, make sure that you're providing us with some feedback on how the system is working for you or it's not working for you. And in the next coming years of the 3-year cycle, we're going to start phasing in some of the elements incrementally. So if you look in the first year that trained in the last 12 months, in the next calendar year, will become more relevant. That's what we're going to be looking for and using as our defining metric for active trainer. Then in the second year, we're adding on more of those components, right? We're going to build out merit and we're going to enhance merit as we go incrementally along. We're going to look at, in the second year, we're going to look to see that trainers have facilitated a training in the last 12 months, or in that they've met the in-service requirement, and that they've also resolved any complaints that they might have in their account. And the third year is just a building block, right? We just keep on incrementally increasing the requirements until we're at full, we're using all the indicator for active trainers in that third year. So that's when the data entry requirements pop up. So we're going to work our way into full implementation. And this will help also because Merit is a little bit clunky. It takes a little bit of time. They have a lot of enhancements that they're doing at the same time in Merit. There's a backlog of activities that we have to get through, or the IT team has to get through. And so this phase in allows us to make sure that we're getting everything done and not straining anybody else too much because we're building out a bigger system. I'm going to do a pause here and take a quick look at the questions that are coming in. The latest one I see, are there any differences for online versus in-person trainers? Great question. There are differences in our policies for what it means to be an online trainer and what kind of things we're looking for versus in-person training. But in this case, we are not, those differences are not being reflected because these are very universal and general indicators for active trainer. Someone else, Sarah asked if, just lost it. Sarah asked, can you give out your own training separate from the organization you work with? You can always deliver a training separate from the organization you work with if it is compliant with the policies of your employer. What is the data entry requirement? That's a good question. And I mentioned a little bit of some of the requirements earlier. Not completely set in stone because we're still developing the process and the policies around this. But the data entry requirements would be entering your training in Merit with the appropriate amount of time before your training occurs, making sure your rosters are updated within the 30-day timeline, making sure that when you're putting in your training template that you're doing that properly. And so those are some of those things that we would be checking internally through quality assurance checks. A person, Debbie is asking, how does a trainer document their affiliation if they train for multiple organizations? If a trainer is not employed by an organization and they train for other organizations in the state, they are an independent contractor, and so there will be a way to document that they are not affiliated or they're an independent contractor. And then Maria is asking, if my observations were done in Spanish, do I need to submit a new application in English? I'm not entirely sure about this question. I think it is asking, Maria, if you could provide it with a little bit more context, that would be helpful so I can make sure I'm answering the right question. But we have had a question about, will this trainer renewal process be, will the application be available in other languages in Merit? And from what I understand from our developers in Merit is that we are not positioned to translate things in that data, in that software. It's not possible for us. Things like, we do have the ability to translate do have the ability to translate the standards of practice and professionalism, and that's something that we are considering. But right now, the application in merit is going to be in English. And Erica, if you're confused about in-service hours, I hear you. I know a lot of people are going to have a little bit of tension and unresolved feelings around that right now. We're working on being a little bit more clear about what the in-service requirements would be. One thing I want to point out is, looking at the slide that you have in front of you, is that the MET in-service hours doesn't come into play until the year 2022. So that's not something we need to dwell on too much. We have a little bit of time to redefine that. Gotcha. And there's a clarification about Maria's question: is if trainers are bilingual, do they have to be observed delivering trainings in both languages? I don't think that is necessary. There is no policy saying that we need to observe in both languages if folks are bilingual. Okay, I am going to move on. I know there's a lot more out there, so give me 1 second. So we have had questions about the 12 months, completed a training in the 12 months requirement. And the question is, what if a trainer was not able to complete a training because of COVID-19 and they don't do online training, or maybe they're not employed right now and they're just generally not actively training? That's a great question. And at this point, our renewal is at the end of this year is not asking folks to have delivered a training in the last 12 months. So right now, we're just looking for updated information. We're looking for acknowledgement of the standards of practice, and we're looking for that survey response. And I just addressed that, so that doesn't matter. This is an area, the core competencies is going to be an area where there's a little bit of tension, because our core competencies are not necessarily written with adult learners in mind, or facilitating professional development for adult learners in mind. There are some indicators in the core competencies that do address that. So we're really working hard to think about what is most important for a trainer to know, what kind of standards do we want to hold them to, and we're also working with several professional development partners around developing trainer support modules, and acknowledging those modules that exist in the system already. For example, the Imagine Institute has trainer support modules. So we're thinking about, how does that fit into a system, and how does that work with those 15 in-service hours that we're requiring? We'll be working on that moving forward. So you'll be involved in shaping and informing some of those considerations as we move forward. You can expect probably survey questions in that survey that you submit in your renewal application that have to do with this area. I want to see I want to really learn from you all how trainers are getting professional development on adult learning, instructional design, facilitation. Are there peer learning communities out there for trainers? How are people doing book clubs? I know there's a lot of different ways to learn around this topic, and so I'm really curious to hear about the variety of things that people are doing to build their skills around this area, and then using that to build a requirement that makes sense, because this 15 in-service hours is not meant to be punitive. It's not meant to be a barrier. It's meant to help people build their skills. So it's an area where I'm going to have to say, don't have as much clarity as I want to. And if anyone knows me, you kind of know that I like things to be a little bit more clear. But I'm going to get there, and I'm going to rely on you to help me figure this part out. Okay. So will trainers need to submit evidence of learning for completed in-service? I saw a question about this in the chat box too. There's going to be a way that we feed and make a connection between the in-service hours and someone's professional record and this application, the trainer record. So we're going to make sure the systems talk together. It's really easy for us to use the in-service documentation and merit to show up in the trainer application. And then this is a really important question. Right now, there's no easy way to do this, but one of the things that we're thinking about is top of mind is, will the trainer renewal process include a way for a trainer to advance in their core competency areas? I know a lot of us, or a lot of people, have submitted applications as they were working on degrees, as they were building their skills, and or they were really beginner novice trainers, and like 5 years later, they have a degree, they have a lot more experience, and they want to see if there's a way to move up and be able to deliver in a wider range of core competencies at a wider range of levels. And as of right now, in order for anyone to move up or change their core competency areas that they have permissions in, or their level, they have to submit a completely new application, which is cumbersome and takes a lot of time. What we're trying to do is, we've had conversations with Merit and IT. This is part of our ask, is to make it easier for the professional development team on their administrative Merit side to be able to toggle and move people up. So it's under construction, and it's definitely on top of mind. I know this is important for a lot of folks. So if you're interested in moving up in your core competency areas, it's going to happen where we build it into our system, where it'll be easier to request that reevaluation versus completing a whole new trainer application. It doesn't exist now. I can't tell you when it's going to be done, but it's definitely going to happen. All right, so are there any differences for high school instructors who are state-approved trainers? I mentioned this earlier, but just in case you want to have it in writing, or you need to read it to understand it, kind of like I do, instructors are going to have a different requirement for that 12-month completion for trainings. And they're also going to have a different requirement for those in-service hours, because they have their own clock hour that they have to do for their own professional development within their system. So I am working with Michelle Spencer at OSPI. She is a family consumer sciences person at OSPI, and we were just on the phone today talking about how we're going to message this to childcare, to high school instructors who provide childcare basics. So I would say stay tuned. There's going to be a message in the next couple of weeks about this that's going to come from DCYF and OSPI together about what you can expect in terms of the renewal for anyone who is delivering childcare basics in a high school setting. It does sound, gotcha. There's a question about, is there more to the renewal process? Are you going to show the application? How long does the approval take? And if you aren't approved, is there a way to appeal? So that's a really great question, series of questions, really. I kind of like your style that I ask questions, like just fire them off. So at this point, the renewal process is really what I shared with you. It's those 3 steps of update all of your information, read and e-sign the standards of practice and professionalism, and complete the survey. I can't show you what the application looks like because it is not designed. We have to go through a very iterative process with our IT team at DCYF to build anything out, and it takes a really long time. So this is, we're in May. We probably will not expect we're not expecting to show anything to you until the fall. The application process itself, you'll have some time to do it, but it's not going to take very long because it involves you reading a document and it involves completing a survey and updating some information. And it's not a complicated process. It's not like the initial application for trainer approval, which does take time and a lot of effort. And if you're not approved, is there a way to appeal? Right now, this cycle of approval is so basic that there will probably not be a need to appeal. We just ask you to complete a couple of things. Moving forward, we haven't gotten there yet with thinking about what does an appeals process look like when someone is denied their renewal, but that is something that we'll keep in mind as we work through and design those phases that I showed in the previous slide. At what date do we start the renewal process? Great question. I can tell you all that this process is being built out. So we're at the beginning stages, and we are helping, I guess what we're doing right now is helping you understand that this is coming, and these are the requirements that we're going to have, and this is how we're going to build out into a full implementation. It also means that right now we're really just working on it. We're sharing the concept with you. So you're gonna have an opportunity to start the renewal process towards the end of this year. I'm hoping that it will be live sometime in the fall. I cannot give a better date than that because it's not really up to me. It's really up to our IT and how long the build out takes. So it's not concrete, but that's the best I can do. And what if my school is not listed in the organization dropdown? It sounds like you might be a high school instructor, Marine. If you're not listed if your school's not listed, then what you could do, what we're thinking of doing is listing educational service district or creating a way to capture all of our high school instructors in one bucket, an all-inclusive category. So there is going to be a way to capture high school state-approved trainers. I'm just gonna real quick look at the chat box again and continue doing that. Will an annual observation be required to maintain renewal? Our quality assurance process for state-approved trainers is in the process of being improved, right? I feel like a lot of these things that we have written down in paper and written down in our standards of practice and professionalism are in the stage where we're building out systems to make sure that they're sustainable, that they happen regularly, and that there's some sort of system in place to make sure annual observations are happening. So for some people who have organization trainer mentors, folks like Imagine and Child Care Aware trainers, they're getting those annual observations. Other trainers are doing might be randomly getting quality assurance checks or observations by trainer observers. So not everybody gets an annual observation in our system. It really depends on whether you are a trainer with an affiliated professional development partner. And if you are, then you're getting annual checks. If you are not, then you're an independent trainer and you're going to be part of those random quality assurance observation checks, and that's a different pool. Okay, I'm scrolling up. Okay, there's a lot of questions out there still. I think this is a really good time for me just to open it up and have conversations with you all. If you have anything that is on your mind that we haven't addressed yet, but it's really kind of just part of what you're thinking, I want to hear from you. And if you can somehow let Marlene know in the box you want to be unmuted, and then go ahead and question, speak me your question. That would be helpful. And if there's anything that, as I was going through this renewal process, sharing what bare bones information I have right now, and if there's anything that you want me to make sure that I address as we're thinking about this, let me know. It looks like we have some takers, Marlene.
Hello. I unmuted, yes.
Hi, I'm Patty Byrne, and I've been a trainer since 1999, so 21 years training. I'm also a school teacher, middle school, and as of yesterday, I was just renewed my teacher credential for another 6 years. And so I turned in 184 clock hours, 27 being STEM. Are those going to be considered in-service hours as well? I have my master's, or is that something that I'm gonna have to go back and, I'm just a little confused about the in-service hours because I take about 30 a year now. That's my first question.
Yeah, great question. I appreciate you've clearly been doing the work for a really long time. I want to applaud you for it. It's really hard work. And that's a question that we are working through with OSPI. I don't know what the formula will be, but it doesn't make sense to apply DCYF and service requirements for providers, for for childcare providers, to folks who are doing work that is different in the school district. So there is no clear answer for you right now, but other than top of mind, and you'll get messaging from DCYF and OSPI in the coming weeks about what it will look like. But you all will not have the in-service requirement, but there will be some sort of requirement for professional development for you, but it will probably be within the scope of the system that you're in already.
Okay, cool. And the last question I have is, I have about 30-hour people still finishing. 2 have COVID-19. What do I do? I told them their deadline was March. Can I say June? I've updated all you guys' policies.
Are you referring to students who are in your class taking childcare basics right now who are not able to finish?
I told them all March 31st was the deadline. And then I extended it because I had called you guys and you said you got to be done by June, because I do it all online and I've updated all of the policies and all the health department changes, but I still have maybe 6 that are still taking it. 2 have COVID. They're really sick. So what do I do?
Great question. I'm not sure who you talked to on our end. Could you Skype can you send us your contact information so we can follow up with you? Because this is a little bit off topic for us here. Okay, cool. But I want to make sure to get to other folks who have renewal questions. But we will follow up with you. Mm-hmm.
Janet, you are unmuted.
Oh, yeah. Hi, it's Janet here. So 2 questions. I had asked the question in the text, but I think you missed it. So I have been doing lots of trainings with parents, the ASQ specifically this year, last year. I've supported BSK in some trainings as well. But for my parents, I don't have any, well, except for the sign-in sheet, but I don't put those in merit. So how would you know that I've been doing trainings if I didn't do trainings that with participants that have STARS ID? You see what I'm saying? I mean, moving forward, that's my question. And the next one was the in-service hours. What is considered in-service hours? Because I do lots of training with Imagine You, and they put that information in merit. Would that be the in-service hours for trainers? Would that be considered?
Those are really good questions, Janet. Thank you for bringing up the fact that it's never really black and white, and trainers do wear a lot of different hats and they work with a lot of different people. When we thought about the renewal process for our state-approved trainers, we were thinking about trainers who work specifically within early learning and with early learning providers, because that is the purview of and that is the scope of the state-approved trainers that we have been building over the course of the years. But you're right, some trainers do continue training and do provide training with that are non-in-service hours for child care providers. So don't have a clear answer for you around that one, but I think it's a really good question. I I've noted it down. I'm going to think about what it means for us. And you'll probably see an FAQ response to this question because I think it's really, I think it's applicable to a lot of different people. And your second question was around if you deliver training for Imagine You and it's in-service hours, does it count towards your in-service
No,
hours?
I actually took trainings with them. So for yeah, I took some classes through them.
Right. And if you're
And then
taking the classes,
BSK, and then within Reach, I do a lot of I take a lot of classes through them. Birth to 3. So will those be? Yeah.
those are good questions. Any training that you have that you're participating actively in as a participant, like you're there to grow and learn and take in the knowledge, that's for your own professional growth. As long as you sign the sign-in sheet and you get put on the merit roster and you see those trainings show up in your record, those will be trainings that will count for your hours, for your in-service hours, until we better define what those 15 hours, what content area those 15 hours are supposed to be in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.
All right, so it looks like Karen had a question. So Karen, you are unmuted now. Karen, are you there? I just unmuted you, Karen Zajakowski.
You might be muted on your end, Karen, if you're having some issues there. Is there someone else while Karen works through technological kinks or maybe uses the chat box for a question?
So there was some that were jotted down when you asked the question again, just to ask. I can go down the list of them. Would you like that? The first one was, well, first of all, I want to say I jotted all of them down, so we'll review all of them. But one of the last ones was, will there be a training for people who are new trainers with the initial process?
Okay, will there be a training for new trainers on the initial process of how to become a trainer? Maybe that's the question. If you wrote the question, you might want to chime in. One of the things that I'm noticing is that we don't provide a lot of guidance for folks who are becoming trainers on how to navigate our system, because there's a lot of different requirements from using our training design template to the core competencies and how to write a learning objective, things that we used to define and talk about in those online training modules that were part of the trainer application. Those don't exist anymore. And so there is a void out there that we know exists for new trainers. And so I'm working on a couple of things that, and I'm not sure what the timeline is around them, just because of all the capacity constraints on my time. But I know that there is an issue with supporting new trainers and helping them navigate what steps they need to take to become trainers. So we're working on that. If that wasn't your question, or if you're talking about trainers who've just been accepted into their role and need more professional development, I want to say that there have been very few opportunities to learn how to grow your skill as a trainer in our system. It's a problem and that we're completely aware of and we're working to resolve.
Okay, so it looks like Maria has a question. So let me find her in the chat box and then unmute her. So Maria, you are unmuted.
Thank you. So my question is, if I have the Department of Early Learning State Approved Trainer, but it says it's specialist level 1 and 2 core competency, that's only for 10 hours. But if I want to be able to do the 30 hours, what do I need to do?
You're wondering about the healthcare basics requirements, correct?
Yes, correct.
Child Care Basics trainers are able to train in all core competencies, level 1 through 5. And in order to do that, there's educational requirements, and you have to have knowledge in all of the core competency areas. So Maria, if you can send an email to the training inbox specifically about those, we have a couple of people who can help answer those questions for you.
Okay, and then my second question, is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
To give a class with just the 10 hours that I'm approved for, am I able to do that without having a fee, just if I wanted to give out a training class for that?
Can you say that one more time? I'm having a little bit of a hard time following.
So can I give a class without charging for it? Like if I don't have a fee that people don't have to pay for it, I just want to give a training. Can I do that, or does it have to, people need to pay for the class?
It is up to the state approved trainer who is delivering a training what the fee associated with it is. So it depends on you and if you're training with an organization. So you have freedom in that area.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so it looks like Shannon has a clarifying question. So let me find you, Shannon, and then I'm going to unmute you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I want a clarifying question. Application is end of 2020. So does that mean that year 1 starts 2021 and year 2 is 2022 and year 3 is 2023?
Yes, that's right, Shannon. So year 1 is 2021, year 2 is 2022, year 3 is 2023. With the caveat that we have to transition on a fiscal year calendar somewhere within that. So I think that as we're at a certain point, we're going to have to move from the end of a calendar year to the end of the fiscal year. So it's likely one of those years is going to be a little bit longer, specifically 6 months longer than another year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, because right now it's calendar, you're going to move it to fiscal, so somewhere in the middle we're going to have to go longer.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Does anybody else want to chat through a question? Please let me know, put your name down in the chat box, or else I can go back to some questions that were asked at the beginning. There's around 60.
Oh, that's going to be fun. I think I saw Julie Wazalewski raise her hand.
Yes, let me find you, Julie, 1 second. There's a lot of people who joined tonight. Pretty exciting.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a huge count. Well, that's only a fraction of the 1,400 that are in our system right now.
Oh my gosh, I cannot find Julie. Where is she?
I'm right here.
Oh. We can hear you. We can hear you.
Well, let's talk. Hey, Jessica, so you were talking about like new trainers, they might run a time about when they apply, but won't they still have to fill out the new trainer application? Or will they, or can they just go into the renewal trainer application?
Well, they'll still have to do the new trainer application. So it's really not, this renewal that's happening at the end of this year, it's not super cumbersome. So if they're becoming a trainer now, they complete the full application for a specialist trainer and they submit all their documentation and then get their observations done. And then they'll have to submit a review by the end of the renewal by the end of this year. If they're becoming a new trainer, they could wait until January and submit everything then. and go through their observation then, and they won't have to do the renewal, right? Because they'll be on a different time after that. They'll be on a 3-year cycle, but it will be a different 3-year cycle.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so it looks like Mumina has a question. Mumina, you're unmuted.
Yes, are you guys hearing me? Hello?
Yep,
Yeah,
keep going, we can hear you.
Yeah, my question is like I just got approved in late 2019, like November. I'm just in state of Virginia for a couple of months, like 5 months now. Do I need to do the application again?
Yes, everyone needs to do this application again. It's merit is set up in a way where every single person who is part of the trainer workforce now will need to go through renewal, or they will not be able to submit another merit roster or even create a training event in merit. So it doesn't matter how new you are, it doesn't matter how long you've been doing this. If you're a state approved trainer now, you will have to renew at the end of this year. And if you do not renew at the end of this year, you will not be able to enter a training event in merit.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
Vasilia, it is 7 o'clock. I'm not sure if you want to take one more question. I have jotted all of the ones from the chat box. I see Julie has her hands up.
Oh, no.
I can take one more. Take one more question. Okay, or I don't have to take a question. So there are a lot of questions, and I really appreciate you all showing up today and asking them. I know that this was sort of a preview for what is coming. We want to make sure that you're aware that there's going to be a change that we're building out. You now know as much as we do about what it looks like at the moment, and we'll really keep you in the loop using all of our social media and all of our newsletters and listserv to make sure that you're getting the most up-to-date information about what this turns out to be. And of course, you won't miss when this application goes live, the renewal application goes live. We'll make sure you know. So if you have any more thoughts about this, if you have any more questions or concerns, feel free to email the training inbox at, I'm going to write it down for you, at training@dcyf.wa. Oops, I can't type when everyone's looking at me, .wa.gov. And we'll be able to take that information or those concerns and questions in and answer them. If you're thinking it, chances are someone else is thinking it too. So thank you for joining, and it's so good to see all of you here. And we're going to make something good together. All right, I'm going to hang out if you want to type more questions for me, but if not, then have a really nice evening.
If you're still on the call, please email me if you want to subscribe to the newsletter, and I have put my email a lot in the chat box. Thank you.
Hey, Marlene, are you still on?
Yes.
There was a request in the chat for an email address from Debbie. Do you know, there's a lot of Debbies. Which one were you referencing?
Debbie Roberts.
Okay, not me, just making sure. Thank you. Have a good night. I'll email you later.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
Good night.
Thanks, Marlene.
Thanks.
All right, Vasilia, I'm logging off. It looks like Burn P14416E has a question.
Yeah, okay. Let's Burn, how about unmute from your end? Because I don't think you're muted.
I think it's unmuted.
I'm sorry to be a pest. I just my training that I do, the 10-hour training, I know you guys are going to tell me about the 20-hour, but the 10-hour, we're still good to go, right? Because I have a lot of students enrolled right now. It's all online. So everything's okay, right?
Are you referring to, I'm not sure which 10-hour you're referring to when you say that. Are you talking about Child Care Basics?
I know the 30-hour is childcare basics. I'm also,
so
I'm approved in all core competencies. So I've been training,
Okay.
so I train random variety of topics, and I train hundreds. And so through the year, not at one time, but like I've got, I think 3 that are active right now that are finishing my 10-hour class. So the 10 hours, everything's okay. Because 10-hour, there's no deadline. I can keep training, correct?
There is no change in your state approval status right now. The change will happen at the turn of this calendar year. So December 31 would be the last day you can do anything, right? If you don't go through renewal. So you don't have to worry.
I'm definitely going through renewal. So
Right.
But it's not open right now though. We can't go in and start updating right now, right?
Right. It is not made. It is not there. But so don't spend time looking for it. But you're going to be whatever you have right now is going to be, nothing's going to happen to it. You can still put in your rosters. You can still close that class out, so you don't have to worry about it. It's business as usual until the renewal goes live, right? And
Okay.
then you can do that. But right now you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I'm not accepting any 30-hour. I'm just trying to get my 30-hour people to finish. So I'm like going, you guys, you're supposed to be done by March. And they're like, I've given them all the updated health stuff, but I just want them to finish. And a lot of them it's language problems. So I'm translating to death. It's like, oh my God. Okay, so
yeah.
But 2 people that don't speak English very well, they do have COVID. So I'm just wondering, they have 5 and 6 out of the 10 modules done. And I'm like, you need to get done by June, I believe, right? Or am I wrong on that?
Well, how about we have an offline conversation about this? And I think if there's a health issue and they cannot finish, but they can finish at a later time, we can figure something out for them. Yeah, we'll just sort it out.
I'm really sad. I'm really sad that you guys took away the 30-hour, because I work with 5 big companies like KinderCare and that I'm really good at the 30-hour training, but I changed it all to online. It took me forever, and I love my online. So I get it. I know why you did it, but I'm like, oh, I love my 30-hour class.
Yeah.
But I understand consistency. And I know if I want to do it in person, I can. It's just, so, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. You guys have been super helpful. Thank you so much.
Yes, of course. And you stay healthy, stay well.
You too. Stay healthy.
Thank you. All right, Marlene, I think let's shut this down. I think we're going to keep on getting questions, and that's fine, but we have plenty of them to answer, and it is after 7. So thank you, everybody who's still on the line, for joining. I appreciate you making time and listening and thinking about this with us. So we will talk to you soon. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye.